I've been teaching English for 11 years, and I still consider myself a learner because, after all, I'm always learning something new. And yeah, I'm one of those learners that are obsessed with phrasal verbs. And this is why in this video, I want to talk to you about why I think it's totally okay to be obsessed with phrasal verbs. Lately, I've seen different videos from teachers and coaches saying that students, English learners, don't need to worry about phrasal verbs, don't worry about them at all. And although I understand they have good intentions, they were trying to help you, I think this is not the best advice. And I'll tell you why. Just in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, a phrasal verb consists of a verb, like eat, and a particle. For example, up. Up is a preposition, right? So if I tell my son, eat up your vegetables, what am I saying? I'm telling him that I want him to eat all his vegetables, everything. If I simply say eat, eat, I'm not saying how much, right? Just eat. Eat up your vegetables, eat everything. So a phrasal verb works as a unit of meaning. It has its own meaning, okay? My focus here is not to talk about the different meanings of different phrasal verbs. We can talk more about that later in another video. But today, I want to tell you why I think it's totally okay to want to learn more about phrasal verbs and have this thirst for knowledge, In other words, why it is okay to be obsessed with phrasal verbs. Reason number one is they're everywhere. I'm sure you've noticed that, right? We always come across phrasal verbs every day as we study English. Just imagine being told not to worry about something that is everywhere. You see it all the time, people use it all the time, but don't worry, they're too hard. You don't have to worry about them, don't worry about learning them. I don't buy it. I don't think this is really good advice for you. I understand that non-native speakers tend to avoid, so research has clearly shown that non-native speakers, when talking, avoid phrasal verbs. But this doesn't mean because they avoid using phrasal verbs that you shouldn't use them. Why do they avoid using phrasal verbs in the first place? Because they're hard to learn, right? They're difficult. And many times we have one word equivalents, right? But even in these cases, when we have a one word equivalent, let's focus on get up. Get up and arise. What's more common, even among non-native speakers? Get up, right? Take a look at these sentences. Which one sounds more natural to you? I arose at 6:30 a.m. I got up at 6:30 a.m. I'm sure got up, right? So come on, phrasal verbs are everywhere and we start learning them from the beginning. I remember being a beginner when I first started learning English. I remember learning get up, wake up. It's true that people might say, how about the context? They'll get it. Learners will get it. The context is enough. Not always, not always. And I'm speaking from my own experience. Just try learning how to drive from a native speaker of English, somebody who speaks English as their first language, and they're trying to tell you how to drive. Just try that. So my husband is the one who first started teaching me how to drive. And I just remember my first driving lesson, he'd be like, okay, don't forget your turn signal before you pull out. I'm like, pull out, okay. Pull out, okay, pull out, right? I guess when I move the car. Okay, but then when you pull over, do your turn signal as well. Okay, pull over. And then he was like, oh, by the way, pull up to the car next to you before you parallel park. Pull up to, and then, oh, okay, now let's try to pull in. Like, why pull up? Pull over, pulling. What in the world is this? All this leads me to the second reason why I think it's okay for learners to be obsessed with phrasal verbs. And that is because they're hard. They're difficult. When something is hard, we tend to spend more time working on it, right? We spend more time trying to learn. It's totally normal. Nobody is ever obsessed about learning the plural of nouns in English because for the most part, it's pretty simple. House, houses, car, cars. We do have irregular plural, right? Woman, women. But for the most part, you add an S, you're okay. Even if you make some mistakes, don't add the S. People understand you. That's fine, right? So when something is hard, I don't know about you, but I get very invested. Like I want to investigate. I want to dig deeper. I want to understand what's going on. So I think people should be allowed this curiosity. Another example, I was teaching a class at a college here in my area, and my students were really confused when I said that there was going to be a tornado drill and the sirens were going to go off. And they were like, why are they going to go off? I mean, aren't they supposed to be on? And I'm like, no, to go off means to ring, like da na na na. You see, context wasn't enough here too. And just a few thoughts here. Why are they so hard to learn? First of all, there are so many, right? Some linguists estimate that there are over 5,000 phrasal verbs. That's a lot. Also, they can have different meanings, right? Just try looking up the meaning of make out. So many meanings. Also, they can be very similar, like they can look alike, like get away and get away with, but they mean completely different things, okay? They don't mean the same thing. Something very important I should mention is that phrasal verbs, the construction is not common in most languages in the world. It's something that is more common, as far as I know, in Germanic languages. So my native language, Portuguese, is a Romance language. It's Latin based. We don't have phrasal verbs, and most languages don't really have anything that's similar. So it's hard for students to make associations because it's something completely new. It's a completely new concept. And this leads us to reason number 3. They're part of the nature of the English language. I'm not sure if I phrased this really well, but basically what I want to say is, again, going back to the fact that English is a Germanic language. It is a language that was heavily influenced by Latin and by Greek, but it is naturally, originally, a Germanic language. So phrasal verbs are actually an essential part of the English language. English is a language, along with other Germanic languages, English is considered a satellite framed language. What does that mean, teacher Natalie? Don't worry about these concepts, but basically, satellite framed. The verbs need a satellite, a particle. It needs more information to talk about motion, movement. So for example, if I say that something fell down. I know I used to be like, fell down, of course, something falls down. Because in my native language, we have the verb to fall is cair, to fall, right? It's always down, right? But in English, something can fall down, but then it can fall off. It can fall over. You see, that is confusing for most learners. And this is part of being a satellite framed language. You need this particle to give you more information about the verb. So because it is part of the nature of the language, it's something that we should all learn and care about. Perhaps the word obsession is too strong. Maybe curiosity would be more appropriate. Like learners are very curious about phrasal verbs, although I still think obsession perfectly captures how I feel about phrasal verbs. Anyways, the idea of this video here is not to tell you that you should be obsessed about phrasal verbs. The idea here is to say that it is okay. If you are, it is okay to be like that. And if you're not, that's okay too. Maybe there's something else you're obsessed about. Maybe you love pronunciation. You love learning about verb tenses. You love learning idioms. I don't know. We're all different, right? We all have different passions. And My main goal with this video is to show you that it's okay to obsess over phrasal verbs, to want to understand them, and to want to learn them, as long as it doesn't get in the way of your communication. Remember, language is all about communication. It's all about talking to people, about understanding others and being understood. So of course, I don't want you to be leaving this video throwing in a bunch of phrasal verbs in every sentence. No, that's not my goal here. My goal is to say that it's okay to have this thirst for knowledge. Well, if you're obsessed with phrasal verbs, or if you're not, but you want to learn more, I actually have a resource for you. Back in 2020, I was still doing my master's in TESOL, and I put together an ebook for my students. It was also part of a project I was working on, and this ebook has the top 10 most commonly used phrasal verbs in the English language. According to corpus linguistics research, it's not something that I put together on my own. I just thought, okay, I'm going to think of 10 phrasal verbs that I think people will like. No, these are the top 10 most used phrasal verbs according to research. And the good news is, I've recently updated this ebook. It's quite the upgrade. It looks so much better now. And you have the chance to download this ebook for free. Just click the link in the description and you'll be able to have access to this material. If you're a learner, you see that there are tons of exercises you can do to learn more about the meaning of these different phrasal verbs. And I also talk a little bit about the relationship between the core meaning of prepositions and the meaning of phrasal verbs, something that, if you know me well, I love to talk about in my classes. Yeah, and if you're a teacher, you can feel free to use this material in your classes with your students. I'd be so happy to see you do that. Also, give me feedback. I'm open to feedback. I love receiving feedback from others. Well, I'm so glad to be back here recording a video. It's been so long since I uploaded a video to my YouTube channel. So thanks for sticking with me, for being here. Even though I haven't been very active on YouTube. I hope you're doing well. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'd love to answer any questions you may have. So I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully not very far from now. See ya.